Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you're watching first part of What If Naruto Was Left Behind by Team 7 after Bell Test. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Naruto was shocked and a little hurt to see that his team, which had just passed, had just left him tied to a tree stump. The boy with blonde hair screamed, "Oi, hurry up and untie me." He hoped that his team could hear him. This had to be some kind of gross joke, right? As Naruto fought against the rope that held him to the log, he cursed. He tried the rope escape technique to get away, but he couldn't remember how to do it well, and they weren't taught how to untie anything bigger than a Chunin-level rope. Even making a shadow copy of himself wouldn't help him get free because his hands couldn't get past his middle before they were stopped by his tight chains. Finally, the young Genin gave up and just stared blankly at the floor. Is Gigi telling the truth? Naruto thought to himself in pain. Out of all the things the third Hokage said, he remembered this one thing: his first team wasn't just a team. It was meant to be his family. And Naruto really believed what the old man told him. It was one of the main things that pushed him to become a ninja. Then he would finally have a family he could trust completely, and they wouldn't even forget about him after he graduated. But as soon as his team finished their first activity together, things went back to the way they were. Kakashi just walked away, but Sakura followed Sasuke wherever he went. It seemed like Sasuke and Sakura were about to feed him, and Kakashi's speech was all fake. They would only be so friendly when they were on a mission. Naruto lost himself in his thoughts. As the hours went by, he slowly became tired. He held on tight to the hope that one of his team would realize they were wrong and come back to help him. But the hope slowly died out until it was gone. What made me think things would be different? I should only depend on myself in the end. Never again did Naruto wait for someone to come help him. It was like an invisible weight was lifted off his shoulders. The boy with blonde hair desperately tried to think of a way to help him, but his vague memories of the academy and his lack of ninja skills cut him off from any possible solutions. Out of the blue, I thought of something. It was a general outline of some of the skills he had read about in the Scroll of Sealing while looking for something new to learn. He couldn't understand most of the techniques he saw, so he skipped over them after quickly reviewing what they did and how they worked. Eventually, he found the multiple shadow clone technique. He gave the Scroll of Seals in the forbidden techniques it held a lot of thought before he remembered one of the techniques he saw inside. The 8 gates inside. Naruto didn't remember much about the technique, but the way it was described as being able to temporarily make someone faster and stronger until they beat the Hokage was very interesting to him. He didn't try to learn this technique because there was a warning that said using it could kill you. Even so, Naruto had a very vague memory of how to open the first gate. The blonde boy forgot about it for a week, but he remembered that there was a certain spot on the left side of the brain that could be opened. Naruto thought to himself, if I were stronger, I could just snap the ropes. He was getting ready to try to open the first inner gate. Naruto closed his eyes and thought about the chakra path in his body. Along with a few holes, he could see streams of chakra moving through his body. Naruto looked deep into the left side of his mind and saw what looked like a hole but was actually closed. He couldn't remember much about how to open the gate other than the fact that chakra had to be sent to it. Naruto knew that he wasn't the smartest student at the academy, but he also knew that he wasn't not smart either. The boy with blonde hair knew that his brain was one of the most sensitive parts of his body and that if he did something wrong, he could turn into a vegetable. No idea what that was. So Naruto put all of his attention on the closed point on the left side of his brain and sent a small stream of chakra there. He had a vague sense that he had hit a wall, so he slowly pushed as little chakra as possible through the gate. Naruto got a little impatient after hundreds of failed attempts to push the chakra into the locked gate. But the thought of hurting himself after making a mistake scared him more than having to stay at the post for longer. Naruto finally felt a small hole appear at the gate. He then pushed his strong chakra into it. He filled the gate with more and more chakra, slowly but surely making it wider. As Naruto wasn't feeling any pain, he thought he wasn't doing anything wrong. However, he wasn't feeling stronger either. The gate stopped expanding after what seemed like forever, and Naruto's chakra filled it up completely. Naruto opened his eyes and looked around, not sure what to do. Wasn't it my job to get really strong and break these chains? Naruto felt a sudden surge of pain that started in his brain and quickly spread through his body. When the boy opened his mouth to scream, all that came out was a quiet whine. Tears were running down his face. I knew this was going to fail. Why would it do that? I never get anything done. He finally lost consciousness because the pain in his head was too much for him to handle. Naruto had a long dream while he was asleep. The first memory, age 0. It was dark where Naruto was, but he could hear sounds of destruction coming from everywhere. This scared him. He was swaying from side to side, though, and felt warm all over. This made him feel better and took away all his fear. At that moment, all sounds stopped, and he was lost in the warm feeling, leaving behind all the noise. Had he passed out? He had no idea how long he had been like this. Why did he come here? Why did he not want to move? It was the warm sound of a young woman whose voice was cut off by painful groans that pulled him out of his thoughts and fears. I said, Naruto. Don't picky about what you eat. Eat a lot to get healthy and strong. Take a bath every day and stay warm. Don't stay up late either. You need a lot of sleep. And make friends. You don't need many friends, just a few strong ones. It wasn't very good, but keep studying and work hard on your ninjutsu. Remember that everyone has strengths and weaknesses, so don't beat yourself up too much if you can't do something well. Respect your teachers and upperclassmen at the academy. Another important thing to remember is the 3 prohibitions for a shinobi. Be very careful when lending and borrowing money. Save your mission pay. And don't drink alcohol until you're 20. Drinking too much can hurt your health, so don't drink too much. Women are another prohibition. I'm a woman, so I don't know much about this, but remember that there are men and women in the world. So it makes sense to be interested in girls. Don't get hooked on bad women, though. Find someone like me. Speaking of the 3 prohibitions, be wary of Jiraiya. Sensei, you know, Naruto, from now on, you're going to face lots of pain and hardship, be true to yourself, have a dream and have the confidence to make that dream come true. There's so much, so much more that I want to pass on to you. I wish I could stay with you longer, I love you. When the woman spoke her heartfelt words, Naruto was shocked. Who was she, and why did she talk to him that way? He had never met anyone who sounded like that before, and she didn't seem to care as much as she did. The woman seemed to whisper to someone nearby before a man spoke with a voice that was both hurt and warm. Naruto, I'm sorry I won't be able to be your father. Your life will be hard, but I believe in you. Listen to your mom. She was always smarter than me. Do what you think is right every time, and I'm sure you'll turn out to be a great young man that I can be proud of. My son, I love you. Involuntarily, Naruto opened his bright blue eyes to see a red-headed woman and a blonde-haired man standing in front of him, being impaled by the claws of the Kyuubi. They seemed to both mutter something before the Kyuubi quickly shrunk before fusing into his body. Mom. Dad. Was Naruto's last coherent thought before he lost himself to the tide of memories that overwhelmed him. After 4 years, Konohagakure Orphanage, age 4. Naruto was curled up in his bed. He thought it was the only place in this cold, harsh world where he could feel safe. The boy had always wondered why he was treated differently than other kids. He looked out the window and saw kids between the ages of 3 and 8 playing. He wanted to join them, but he knew that all they would do is stare and say mean things. Kids, come down for class. The orphanage was filled with the sound of the matron's voice. The sounds of children playing and laughing died down as they went to different rooms based on their ages. When Naruto walked into a room, there were 7 or 8 other boys and girls fidgeting while they waited for the caretaker to start teaching. Let's learn the alphabet today. The child care worker cheered, which got the kids excited. Naruto was also excited to learn. He had always wanted to be like the people he saw jumping from roof to roof, and he had heard that you had to be able to read and write to do that. The young boy with blonde hair paid close attention as the caretaker gave each child a pencil and a piece of paper while explaining the day's lesson. But when she got to him, she just walked right past him without noticing him. Miss Caretaker, what about me? He asked. What is it? Naruto asked, raising his hand slightly to get her attention. The caretaker kept talking about the basics of the alphabet without pausing to listen to the boy. Naruto stared intently at his table as if he could feel the kids around him staring at him with disapproval, but he didn't ask again. What if he didn't have a pencil and paper? He could still learn, right? After 3 years, Konohagakure Orphanage, age 7. He seemed to be right, but he was wrong. He paid attention to everything the caretaker said and repeated what he heard in his head, but he fell behind in his studies very quickly. Even though the caretakers changed every year as he moved classrooms, they never helped him with his work or gave him a pencil or paper. After a few weeks, age 7. He was thrilled. He was on one of his regular camping trips to get away from everyone who looked right through him at the orphanage when he met an old man in the forest. It turned out that the old man wasn't lost after all. He was the Hokage? Whatever he was the leader of the village. More importantly, he spoke to him and didn't just stare at him like he always did. Instead, he had a warm smile on his face and the old man laughed while they talked. People don't like you say? That was yesterday, the old man had told him. Why not turn into a ninja? As our guardians, they are loved and respected by almost everyone in the village. When Naruto heard this, he was shocked. If he became a ninja, people would like him. The blonde boy was probably even more shocked when he learned that the old man was talking about those cool people who jumped from roof to roof. Really then? Then I want to become a ninja. But how do I become a ninja? Naruto asked with a sigh. I'm not sure if anyone could teach me. The old man gave her a thoughtful look and said, well, I could use my power to get you into the academy. But if you want to be a ninja, you have to train really hard. I will do it. I'll do my best, and maybe one day I'll be Hokage like you. I would love to see that day, Naruto-kun. After 2 years, Konoha Ninja Academy, age 9. Naruto looked at his test grade and saw that it was just barely good enough to pass. Becoming a ninja was much harder than he thought. The little boy thought back to his first few days at the academy. He tried hard to make a good impression on the teachers, but it seemed like they knew each other from the orphanage because they treated him almost the same way. Although these teachers were similar in some ways, they only gave him books like everyone else. That was the only thing they did to help him. Whenever he raised his hand to ask a question, it would stay up until his arm got tired. When I turned in a test or assignment, I only got the overall grade. Other students got detailed feedback on their mistakes. Naruto finally chose to show them how much he cared by working hard and becoming the best student in the class. If he was the best, they would have to pay attention to him, right? He quickly learned that it was nearly impossible for him to become the best student without any help. It didn't help that the books he was given had a lot of words he hadn't learned or couldn't remember from learning the basics at the orphanage. With the help of a book he found in the trash, he slowly learned the words he had missed or had forgotten. But because of this, he spent less time studying to be a ninja and fell even further behind. He tried to feel proud by telling himself, at least I'm not the worst student in the class. But when he looked at the student with the worst grades, he could only feel envy. That student didn't seem to care that he had the worst grade in the class. He was happily chatting with his friends, as if he didn't have a care in the world. It had been a while since he tried to make friends because no one paid attention to him at the orphanage. He didn't even try to talk to anyone when he first got to class because he was afraid they would treat him the same way. Of course, they seemed like nice people, and since he had learned that getting good grades didn't necessarily mean making a lot of friends. Naruto watched the other students in class and thought, they seem like nice people. He then added, there's no point in studying if I'm so far behind. It's not like high grades mean many friends anyway. Naruto looked at the best student in the class, who was staring out the window and not paying attention to anyone else. Sasuke Uchiha. The boy with blonde hair didn't know why Sasuke was acting that way, but he was a little jealous of how well the other students were treating him. People were around the boy, but he didn't pay attention to them. The blonde girl with the name Inoyawa, Yamanaka, and the pink-haired girl with the name Sakura Haruno both seemed to be drawn to the boy. He thought, maybe I should try making some friends. He hoped that this would get rid of the strange feeling he got when he saw other people smile and talk to each other. After 2 years, age 11. It turns out that making friends is even harder than studying. Naruto thought about all the work he had done over the past 2 years while he ignored the teacher. He had been in this class for almost 4 years and still didn't have a single friend. There were times when they really tried to be friends, but everyone always had a reason. He first tried to become friends with Shino Ibarum, a young boy, because both of them were quiet. Even though he worked hard to learn about insects, which were the boy's favorite subject. The boy said one day that his Kakaichu didn't like being around him and that they couldn't be friends. Naruto laughed as he remembered that he should have told him he didn't want to be with him. You didn't have to lie to him. Naruto had also tried to make friends with other people in the class but ran into different problems or outright turned them down. When he tried to talk to a girl named Hinata Hyuga, she would always pass out. He wasn't really scary, right? Naruto thought he was doing well when he was able to hang out with Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, and Kiba Inuzuka. The four of them went to the park to watch the clouds or play on the swings. But after a few times of joking around with them, they didn't want to hang out with him anymore. Naruto changed his goals to something else after the first year of trying to make friends in different ways, such as by finding out what they liked, only doing what they wanted to do, or even giving them gifts. He had heard that people made friends at birthday parties, and his birthday was coming up. He was lucky that the old man gave him his own apartment a few years ago when he spoke out against his caregivers not listening to him. I think he should throw a party. If everyone had fun, they'd want to hang out more. Not even going to Ramen Ichiraku took up any of Naruto's time before the birthday party. He was too busy saving money. He did his best to write invitations by hand for everyone in his class and double checked 3 times to make sure he got their names right before putting them under their desks. At school on his birthday, no one said anything. It was like they hadn't seen the letters at all. Perhaps they're shy? I thought to myself, Naruto said. He knew what they were going through because he wasn't brave enough to invite them in person and could only write letters. The young boy began to get excited. Everyone would show up, and he would meet so many new people that he would no longer feel alone. The apartment was decorated with banners that were made quickly and badly. They made the somewhat dark apartment look much better. Naruto put the food on any surface he could see and then sat down to wait for his first guest to arrive. On the other hand, after waiting for a few hours past the time written on the invitations, no one had shown up. He took a look at the birthday cake in front of him. The little boy thought to himself, maybe they are running late. But as the hours went by and the food got cold, Naruto began to think that no one was planning to show up, even though he was always hopeful. What did I do wrong? They could have told me right away if they couldn't come. He was now an adult. His rejection didn't bother him. Especially after being turned down so many times. He added with a bitter tone. Naruto ate the cake by himself in silence in the end. His birthday party didn't have any guests. Maybe it wasn't good enough for them to be interested? It hurt to think that, but it was better than having to accept that no one liked him. Next year I'll try harder, the boy with blonde hair promised himself. He would get at least one person to come to his party. Naruto saved money most of the time for the next year. In order to make extra money, he would sometimes hunt a hare or boar in the forest and sell it to a truck driver. He sent more invitations to everyone by hiding them in their desks the day before his 11th birthday. On the big day, he bought a bigger cake, more food, and better decorations, which were all set up in a nice way. History did happen again, though. Nobody came, even after he put in more work and hours after the invitation time. Naruto didn't want to be alone on his birthday again, so he chose to just go to the festival. Naruto covered himself up so much that no one could tell who he was to avoid the cold looks and whispers that seemed to be following him. Even so, it was October, and most people cover up in the fall. He walked around for 5 minutes, though, and Naruto wished he hadn't. He learned why no one showed up to his birthday party. At one of the stands, Sakura and Ino were hanging out, and Shikamaru and Choji were eating at another. Naruto even saw Hinata walking with a taller man and a girl who looked a lot like her. Never before in his life had Naruto been so upset. Not even when the people at the orphanage ignored him. They didn't go to his parties because they didn't want to, of course. There must be some other reason, right? They had something to do? The kid never thought he was being needy. His only wish was to be looked at, like old man Hokage did every time he came to visit. Oi, get back here. Naruto turned to see where the voice was coming from and saw a little kid running away from what he thought were his face. Smiled family or friends. The fact that the people chasing the boy were covered in blue, red, and green paint made him feel very confused. A little boy laughed as he ran into the crowd, "You can't catch me. It was your fault for walking into my trap." Naruto smiled a little, even though he was sad. The kid threw a paint bomb at them? It seemed pretty funny. He had a sudden flash of inspiration. A joke? He saw how much attention the boys had as they ran through the people. Even though he wasn't feeling well, he turned his head and stared at them. Will people look at me too if I pull pranks on other people? Naruto didn't care if they sent him funny looks, mean looks, or even angry looks. He was happy as long as someone looked at him. The kid looked at the tents on the street and used the rest of his money to buy a bucket of paint. He already had enough food for a week or more. After 1 year, age 12. Naruto laughed at the joke that had caught everyone off guard. No one had ever thought about damaging the Hokage monument before, so it was never watched over. The fact that Naruto Uzumaki did what he wanted when he wanted was good for them. Many regular people and low-level ninjas yelled, "Get back here, Naruto!" as they gathered into a small mob and chased him. Naruto was happy and smiled. It was great. Instead of boy or you, people called him by name. He had even heard someone call him a fox brat. Putting that thought away, he thought it was because of the fur on his face. When Naruto thought about the first trick he ever played, it was on a teacher who had been mean to him for years. He did it as a joke by painting the teacher's chair and desk again. As soon as the teacher sat down, the paint covered his clothes. Eventually, the teacher called out that it was him, and he admitted it without any shame. Naruto looked at the students' faces in the class in a sneaky way. Some looked angry, while others were smiling. His memory told him that one of the girls was Sakura Haruno. She smiled briefly at him before covering her mouth. He liked how it made him feel, and he wanted that to last as long as possible. Now Naruto liked the girl with pink hair and wanted to be friends with her, even though he had failed before. Naruto really wanted to feel that way again, even after being turned down several times when he asked the girl out on a date. So he stepped up his tricks, which were getting more and more complicated, in the hopes that she would smile at him again. At first, he went after everyone who had been mean to him over the years. Eventually, it got so bad that he pranked a few important parts of the village. After a few days, age 12. Naruto stood in a clearing with the scroll of sealing in his hand. Mizuki Sensei had told him to steal it as an extra graduation test since he had failed the first one. The boy with blonde hair quickly read through the tips on the scroll. Aikido techniques for flying thunder god and ideas about space. Time ninjutsu. The 8 gates inside. Reincarnation of a living corpse. He finally learned a method called the multiple shadow clone technique. Iruka Sensei told him that he had failed because he couldn't make a copy. He passed the hidden graduation test, so if he learned how to do a clone technique, he might be given a higher rank. A powerful Genin? A Genin of the elite? The next few events seemed to blend together as Naruto slowly woke up from his long dream. "You are the Kyuubi no Kitsune." Mizuki yelled at him while Iruka stood guard over him. "He isn't the demon fox. He is Naruto Uzumaki." "Well done. Naruto, close your eyes." In the world of ninjas, people who break the rules are scum. But people who leave their friends are even worse than scum. I don't understand why they left me. Have a dream. Naruto woke up in a cold sweat after the last part of the dream. Was it a dream? He had to have thought so. But he knew it wasn't because those memories were so clear. So I am the son of that red-haired woman and the Yondaime Hokage. Minato Namikaze, Naruto said. Naruto stared blankly ahead and then laughed angrily. Ha ha ha, how silly. Not possible. Never leaving him alone, Minato and the red-haired woman looked at him with love in their eyes as they whispered their last words. There's no way. Why? Naruto asked with tears in his eyes. Why did they choose him? Why did they die? Why did they leave him all alone? Naruto felt angry at them because they ended his dreams that his parents were still alive and well somewhere, unaware of his pain in Konoha. He knew that they were looking for him and missed him just as much as he missed them. But he couldn't. Looking back at his memories helped him understand what he couldn't understand right after he was born. They loved him and didn't want to leave him alone or put him through this life. I'll make them happy. I will get so strong if you watch over me that you will never have to worry about me again. That is a promise. While screaming into the sky, Naruto hoped that his voice would reach his parents in the afterlife. The blonde boy rubbed his face against his orange jacket to wipe away his tears. Once he was calm, he looked down at the rope that was holding him to the log. When he woke up, he remembered everything that had happened to him, including every word of the 8 inner gates technique. Even though he used the wrong tenketsu, the first gate, the gate of opening, was in the left part of his brain. He wasn't supposed to slowly open the gate and fill it with his chakra. Instead, he was supposed to violently force his chakra through the gate, which would give him a temporary boost in strength and speed. Naruto closed his eyes and checked the first gate. It was still open, and his body wasn't under any stress at all. It was strange because he had been outside for several hours, since it was dark all around him. But the scroll of sealing said that opening the gate, even the first gate, was supposed to be very hard on the body, especially for someone who had just graduated from the academy. He felt fine, even better than fine. Was it because of how he opened the gate? Because he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune? Or because he might have gotten a bloodline that changed his body? After hearing his stomach grumble again, Naruto decided to figure out what was going on with his changes later. All he wanted to do was get away from the ropes, eat, and sleep. Think, Naruto, think. What could I possibly do to escape? Suddenly, an idea came to mind. It was a lesson that a Genin had offered to teach a few years ago because his class was full of clan heirs who would be important to Konoha in the future. It was about one-handed hand seals. He didn't understand it at the time, and it wasn't even an interesting lecture. But Naruto did his best to pay attention to everything the Genin said and did. This was one of the best ninjas in the village, and it might help him in the future. A clone seal is used in the multiple shadow clone technique. That's why the one-handed version should be this. Naruto had a hard time getting his right hand into the right seal. He had seen it before and remembered it very well, but he had never tried to use it before. That's why his fingers were shaking a little, because they weren't used to the new, awkward movement they were being put through. Arg, come on. Naruto let out a pretty big burst of chakra, and then a dead clone-like thing appeared for a moment before going away. The trapped Genin screamed in anger. For years, he had to make dead copies of himself, and he didn't want to go through that again. Naruto took a few deep breaths to calm down. Then he focused on his right hand and slowly moved his fingers into a more normal shape. There was no reason for him to get this right the first time. It took him over an hour to learn the multiple shadow clone technique. A dead clone showed up and then disappeared with a poof. Naruto's one-handed clone sign looked more and more like a real shadow clone very quickly. Out of nowhere, a clone of Naruto appeared in front of him. The clone seemed to know what it was supposed to do as it put its hands in Naruto's ninja pouch, pulled out a slightly blunted kunai, and cut the ropes that were holding the boy down. Thanks, Naruto thanked himself? That was strange. The clone just smiled, said, "No problem, boss," and disappeared. Suddenly, Naruto had a flashback. He remembered being tied to a post and digging through his pockets to find a kunai before setting himself free. I can get my own clone's memories? Naruto asked out loud to himself, confused. He hadn't noticed it before, which wasn't a surprise since he had only used them in fights. Naruto concentrated as he tried to remember what the scroll of sealing said about the multiple shadow clone technique. Multiple shadow clone is an A-rank supplementary technique that lets the user make many copies of themselves. The user's chakra is evenly divided between themselves and their clones. See shadow clone technique for more dangers and side effects. This was a great tip that Naruto hadn't thought of before. He scratched the back of his head in surprise. The standard shadow clone technique wasn't in the scroll of sealing. Or maybe it was, but it wasn't in the first 3 techniques he read when he was looking for something cool in the scroll. Naruto was about to think of all the ways the shadow clone technique could be used when he suddenly felt very tired. He wasn't getting enough chakra, hadn't eaten in almost a day, and hadn't slept in almost 20 hours. The young Genin gave up on his ideas and went home. Luckily, Kakashi, the lazy Genin, told him that missions wouldn't start until the next day, so he had time to figure things out tomorrow. Naruto had the best night's sleep he had ever had in his life, which was the opposite of what he said yesterday. The blonde rubbed his eyes as he sat up in bed and thought about what had happened the day before. He wasn't sure what to do now that his feelings had calmed down. Naruto really wanted to scream at the Hokage and ask why the old man kept saying he didn't know Naruto's parents when it was clear that he did. A short time after his parents sealed the Kyuubi into him, he saw the old man pick him up. He couldn't have not known. But what good would it do? Being asked by the Hokage where he learned that information? Even at the end, he said he didn't know who his parents were. What little pleasure he might feel after hearing it from the old man. At the end, Naruto knew who his father was and had enough clues to figure out who his mother was as well. He knew what they looked like, but what they loved him more than anything else. He felt bad inside because the Hokage had been telling him lies for years. He had no idea who his parents were. He had no idea why the villagers didn't like him. He didn't think the Hokage would have told him that the Kyuubi was locked up inside him unless he had to, like Mizuki did by accident. The boy with blonde hair really needed to talk to someone about how he felt, but who could he tell? The Hokage had been telling him lies for almost the whole time he knew him. No way. His team had left him tied to the log not even one day after they became a team. His friends who don't exist. Naruto had even thought about telling Tuchi and Ayame, who were Ichiraku. He had known them for a while because they fed him when he didn't have any money. They were some of the nicest people he knew because they hadn't ignored him because of the KYYBU. But they were just regular people. Naruto didn't want to give them something that could easily kill them if other people found out. Naruto kept it all to himself in the end. Since he was born, he has done everything by himself. He didn't need to tell other people about his problems. That was enough for him. He knew his parents loved him. He then thought about the 8 inner gates, the next problem. His eyes were closed, but he could still see that the first gate was open. He didn't feel any stress. After fully opening the first gate, the only thing that happened was that he remembered everything that had happened in his life. Were you the one who opened the gate? Since memories were stored in the brain, opening the gate gave full access to the memories, right? It wasn't the same as the huge boost in strength and speed that the scroll of sealing said would happen, but when has anything ever been normal for him? Naruto tried to come up with an answer that would make him happy. But he didn't know enough about the 8 inner gates to say what he thought. He only knew that they were tenketsu, but unlike the other tenketsu, which are always open, these ones were closed most of the time. The problem was over for Naruto after he scratched his head in confusion. He would not study any further until he knew enough about the brain, chakra pathways, tenketsu, and the gates. If, by accident, he had found a new way to open the gates, as Naruto thought he had, he would have kept working on it until he had created a version that only he knew of. It's possible that opening each gate would give him a special skill or a boost without putting any extra stress on his body. It would be better than any fancy short-term boost that wasn't his own strength and could hurt him in the long run. Naruto shook his head and woke up from his dream. It wasn't helpful to think about what the technique he found by accident could do. He should concentrate on the present. So, he thought about the multiple shadow clone technique, which was the next problem he had to solve. His lack of knowledge about the method was due to the fact that they were not written in the scroll of sealing. What Naruto knew about the technique was that it made solid copies of things and that when the lifetime of the thing was over, it passed on all of its memories. Naruto did something he hadn't done in a few years because he didn't have enough information. He wrote things down. How many copies can I make? How much damage can they take before they are thrown away? How many memories do I get sent back to me? What happens if I get rid of a clone that already exists? Do both of us remember things? What happens if a clone works out? Do I get stronger? Is everything on me copied, even my weapons? If that's the case, are the copied weapons just as weak as the originals? Once Naruto had written down all the possible uses for the shadow clone technique, he made a clone sign and wished for 4 copies to appear. I want you to read this book. While giving back a book from the academy that he hadn't touched, Naruto made a note to return it before the end of the week. The clone complained, but it still took the book and went to read it in the corner. Then Naruto quickly wrote something on a piece of paper and gave it to another clone, out of sight of the other 2. He threw it away after making sure the clone had read it and then turned his attention to the other 2 clones. You really need to get better handwriting, boss. After rolling his dice, one of the clones said, My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I like ramen. So it seems like the memories are transmitted to all clones. Naruto thought out loud for a moment before he was rudely cut off by himself. I bet even someone who isn't a clone would be able to guess that was what you had written. A clone growled before being violently thrown away. A kunai fell to the ground after it. Naruto gave the other clone a mean look and dared it to say anything. Hey, I like ramen as much as you do, boss. The clone quickly shook his head because he didn't want to be thrown away in that way either. Naruto muttered and put out his hand, whatever, just pass me one of your kunai and start working out. Naruto saw the clone quickly take a kunai out of his pouch and leave the room to work out. It was faster than anything he had ever seen before. Naruto looked closely at the kunai and thought about how it was different from his own while he waited for the clone to wear out. In terms of size, shape, weight, hardness, and sharpness, it was an exact copy. When the cloned kunai was thrown at the wall, it didn't dispel. This was odd, since the shadow clone had just dispelled with a small cut on its leg. Maybe things that aren't alive keep their properties? That being the case, if the object gets hurt in any way, it should break. Naruto said something out loud, then took out one of his kunai and scratched the clone. No doubt about it, the cloned kunai disappeared in a puff of smoke after 10 seconds of cutting. So to keep my clones around for longer, I need to reduce the damage that they take? His muttering filled the apartment as he wrote down each conclusion he came to. After an hour, Naruto got rid of the last of the clones, even though he was very tired and had the Academy book's information in his head. His list of all the results from the tests was written on a single piece of paper. The fight with Mizuki showed that I can make at least 1,000 copies of myself. Clone aren't very strong. Any scratch will quickly get rid of them. When the clones disappear, they send all of his memories to any other clones that are still alive. The cloned weapons are just as strong as regular weapons, but they lose their shape when they run out of chakra. Clones don't get any of your physical training. But they do pass on the tiredness that comes from doing that. The clones also seem to have different personalities, even though they act a lot like I do. Naruto sat down and thought about what he was going to do next now that all the mysteries of the shadow clones had been solved. Naruto Uzumaki promised his parents that he would become the strongest ninja ever, and he always keeps his word. Being honest about his skills was the first thing that came to his mind before he started training, but he didn't know anyone who could help him with that. So, he just wrote down the things he was sure he could do. Ninjutsu, Henge, Kawarimi, and multiple shadow clone. Genjutsu. They can't use any, but they can get rid of jutsu below the D rank. He has only learned the basics of the academy style of taijutsu and doesn't feel comfortable with it. As a shuriken jutsu goal, you must hit a stationary target 5 times out of 10 times from 10 meters away. After painting the Hokage monument, you can avoid a few chunin and stay stealthy. Can run away from chunin? How fast and strong are you? Not sure about strength. Seals with your hands. I can do 2 standard seals in a second, but I can only do one. Handed seal. Naruto sighed as he looked at the short, vague list. To get stronger, I had to do a lot of work. Well, I ain't gonna get stronger just by sitting around. Naruto got excited and was ready to leave through the door too. What should you do? How could he get better? The hand of Naruto was on the door handle. He didn't know much about how to train as a genin other than that his jonin. Sensei was in charge of it. Did they have no other choice but to go ask for help? He had just decided that he could be strong on his own, right? The Shinobi Library. Naruto yelled again as he thought of a place he had wanted to see a long time ago. Naruto tried all kinds of ways to learn faster a few years ago, when he was trying to get ahead of his classmates in learning how to be a ninja. But because he didn't have as many resources as his peers, he learned much more slowly than they did. At one point, he wanted to go to the Konoha library and read different books in order to find a different way to understand what was being taught in class. As he wasn't yet a genin, he wasn't allowed to go into the library. Only genin and above were allowed in. Finally, Naruto, who was always interested, asked about the library's rules, even if it was just to satisfy his curiosity. The library had rules that made it far away and unfair for people who wanted to be ninjas. The first rule was that you had to pay based on the rank of the technique to see ninjutsu and genjutsu. Only techniques below the rank of B are sold. Techniques above the rank of A can be made by the person themselves, learned from a jonin, or read upon entering Anbu. This rule didn't apply to taijutsu and bukajutsu because it took a long time to learn each style and there wasn't one style that was clearly stronger than the others. The second rule said that sources like chakra control and nature transformation exercises could only be seen by ninjas with the rank of genin or higher. While civilians had to become genin before they could read scrolls, clan ninjas were taught the more difficult exercises and techniques at home, giving them a big advantage. Naruto thought this rule was the most unfair. A big fine and a short or long term ban from the library were the third and most important rules. If anyone broke these rules, they would be punished by being kicked out for good. After going over the rules again, Naruto reached for the money belt around his waist and looked inside. He didn't wish he had spent all of his money on ramen very often, but this was one of those times. As he looked at his almost empty pouch, he felt bad. That thought quickly went away though, because he knew he had to get back to the basics first. He was always told by Iruka Sensei that he was bad at controlling his chakra or doing taijutsu or shinkenjutsu. Naruto thought that he should first learn what he didn't know because he hadn't been to the academy in a year. As he learned everything he had missed at the academy, he thought about what cool ninjutsu he should learn next. Naruto opened the door and used his memories to find the shinobi library. He was sure of what he wanted to do. Naruto was seen standing outside the Konoha library not long after it was first seen. It was a big building made of pink stones with mahogany brown planks around the outside. Even though it was a pretty important building in Konoha, the boy with blonde hair noticed that it wasn't very busy. Naruto hoped that he wouldn't be turned away because of his history of pulling jokes. It was one of the few places he wouldn't pull a joke on because he respected the librarian and didn't have any bias. Or maybe she did, but she was good at hiding it. An unhappy part of Naruto's mind thought. Naruto scratched his head in confusion when he opened the front door and saw that there were almost no people inside the library. The library is so useful that it shouldn't be this empty. Maybe I got here too early? Shinobi rarely went to the library unless they were given a D rank mission to clean it, which Naruto didn't know. The reason for this was that all taijutsu, kenjutsu, ninjutsu, and genjutsu were taught by their superiors. There was only one reason they went to the library: to learn a jutsu that no one knew about or to improve their geography skills. Naruto spoke to the half-asleep receptionist. "Hello, lady. I'd like to see the shinobi section." The woman woke up from her sleep trance. "Ah, you're the Uzumaki kid," the receptionist said, and the boy gave her a sheepish look. She didn't want to let him in because she would be responsible for any damage he did to the library. But rules were rules, and any shinobi could come in as long as they weren't banned. Naruto looked at the receptionist with interest while she was having doubts about letting him in. She smiled as she sighed, and all the tension in her shoulders went away. The receptionist told the boy to stay away and said, "Just don't damage anything." She then watched him like a hawk. She wasn't against the boy, but the fact that he liked pulling pranks, even if they were sometimes funny, made her wonder what he was trying to do by going to the library. Naruto picked up a book on the basics of shinobi arts and then sat down at a table in the corner. This made her feel better. She kept an eye on him for about an hour, hoping he would make a mistake, but all she could see was him reading in silence. She finally decided that she could trust the boy. The receptionist went back to what she was doing before he came in because she couldn't keep an eye on him all day. Taking a nap. Naruto finally felt the look on his back go away, which let him focus on the book. He didn't get stared at very often, and never with such a focused look that went straight through the back of his head. At first, he felt a little awkward. He felt awkward at first, but it went away quickly as he read the book. He was able to read the whole book pretty quickly. Naruto thought about what was in the book as he carefully closed it, and then he had an interesting realization. He remembered every word, line, and page in the book. He remembered everything. Naruto wrote down what was on page 48 on a small piece of paper and then looked it up in the book to see if it was correct. It was the same as before. The blonde boy kept testing himself with random lines from the book. Every time, he was able to remember exactly what he had read. Naruto knew he had never had this power before. If he had, he wouldn't have fallen behind at all, not even with the subtle attacks he got at the orphanage in the academy. He remembered that it all began when the gate of opening, the first inner gate, was opened. What if opening the first gate didn't let you get to all the memories, but instead changed my brain so I can remember everything I see? After giving it some thought, it made sense. Naruto found it strange that the clone had learned the book so quickly and could remember everything in it. He finally came to the conclusion that it had something to do with how shadow clones worked. But this was not at all like that. His new skill would help him quickly catch up and even pass everyone in his graduation class. This was especially true with the shadow clones, which made it seem like he was reading 10 or even 100 times at once. Before he got too excited, Naruto took a deep breath to calm down. He was still not sure about some parts of the shadow clone technique. After getting rid of the 2 clones that were reading and training, he did feel very tired and in some pain from the sudden memory flood. That little pain scared him. He didn't want to know what would happen if there were 10, 5, or even just 3 clones reading at the same time. He might even feel the sharp pains he felt the first time he opened the first inner gate. The blonde was sure he was going too fast in the library. Because he used to like pulling jokes on people, he knew that if he made a sound, even if it was just screaming in pain, he would be kicked out right away. Naruto decided to scale back his plan to call up 10 shadow clones and instead only called up one. If he found that reading more than one clone didn't bother him too much, he would give himself more to read in the future. Before he had an idea, clone Naruto went to a nearby bookshelf and took out a book about how nature changes. Henge no Jutsu. The clone changed into a normal genin and then sat down at a table where the receptionist couldn't see it. Naruto's eyes lit up, and he nodded to show his approval of the clever idea. He really was very smart. If other people came in and saw two Narutos reading, they might wonder why he is using clones. Nobody could walk in and see the two Narutos reading because of the henge, and the receptionist wouldn't be able to call out why Genin came in without signing in because the Narutos were hiding in her blind spot. When Naruto found out that the Hokage, the person he thought was closest to him, had lied about the two biggest problems in his life, and when he remembered how everyone he knew had treated him, he didn't know who to trust. Because of this, he would rather not tell anyone about his training for as long as possible. Naruto and his friend sat down and started to read seriously. They turned the pages faster after Naruto found out that his memory was now perfect. His memory was as good as its name said it would be. His reading speed was so fast that most people, not just shinobi, couldn't keep up. He was still memorizing every word. Even though Naruto was only trying to remember, he was naturally breaking down every sentence he read into its most basic parts. He wasn't just repeating facts and memorizing them. He was learning right along with the reading. That's odd. If the first gate is what caused my memory to improve, what could be the cause of my understanding to improve? I thought to myself, Naruto said. At first, he wrote it off as his sudden desire to learn having sped up his progress. Either that, or the book he was reading made it easy for him to understand. Even though Naruto switched books, he still felt the same way. At the end, Naruto just shook his head and kept reading. The sudden rise in understanding and comprehension wasn't a problem that needed to be solved. He didn't need to think too much about little things. He would just think that opening the first inner gate was the cause of his memory changes and the fact that he learned more at about the same time. Naruto was seen reading in the corner for a few hours. He would switch the book out for a different one on the same subject every hour. He learned more in an hour of reading than in a month of school at the academy. Ninjutsu, Genjutsu, and Taijutsu are the main types of shinobi arts. Within these, there are many sub-techniques, such as Bukajutsu, Fuinjutsu, and Juinjutsu. There are even techniques like Senjutsu and space. Time Ninjutsu. Isn't space time ninjutsu one of the skills I learned from the scroll of sealing? Why the Hiraishin? Naruto said out loud to himself, taking his eyes off the book. He quickly looked around the library and found a few books on space time ninjutsu. However, they were more like random notes from the author, with formulas and calculations that would make anyone feel dizzy just looking at them. He saw the word, Fuinjutsu, written quickly on one of the space time ninjutsu notes and thought it looked interesting. Naruto picked up a book on Fuinjutsu because he wanted to learn more about how it was related to space time ninjutsu. The book explained that Fuinjutsu is a type of technique whose only purpose is to seal. Everything can be sealed with Fuinjutsu, including things, living things, and chakra. Naruto looked away from the book halfway through, even though he found it interesting. The Uzumaki clan, who came from Uzushiogakure in the land of whirlpools, were experts in Fuinjutsu. Uzumaki clan? I have a clan? Do they know about me? Naruto asked in surprise and joy. He quickly searched the library for all the scrolls that talked about the Uzumaki clan. But Naruto's happiness turned to horror as he read the few scrolls that were in the library. Each one told him that Uzushiogakure was destroyed in the Second Shinobi World War because people were afraid of their Fuinjutsu. As a result, the Uzumaki clan had almost disappeared, and no one had seen an Uzumaki in the elemental nations. He looked sad because the only chance he had of having a living family had been snuffed out by the actions of shinobi in the past. Despite this, he kept researching the Uzumaki clan. He wanted to know what they were like and if his mother was an Uzumaki. The Uzumaki clan and the Senju clan were related by blood in a distant way. After setting up Konohagakure, the Senju decided to show their friendship with the Uzumaki clan by putting their own emblem on the flak jackets of Konoha shinobi. Uzumakis are known for having red hair and very strong life forces. They reside very long lives and age more slowly than humans. They were very good at Kenjutsu and were thought to be the most advanced Fuinjutsu users in all of the elemental nations. It has also been documented that some Uzumakis have very rare Kekkei Genkai. However, it hasn't been confirmed what type of Kekkei Genkai and what their abilities were. Hair red? It sounds like my mom was an Uzumaki. Naruto thought to himself, I'm one step closer to finding out who my mother was. He hoped he could find her in the shinobi records because he hadn't seen anyone with red hair and no one in Konoha has the same last name as him, so she should be easy to find. Naruto felt a lot of different emotions after reading more about his clan and what they had done. He wasn't really sad that his clan had been destroyed because he didn't know them personally. Instead, he was angry because it ended his last chance to find some lost family members still alive. He was amazed, though, that the Uzumaki family's skills made people all over the elemental nations afraid of them. What are Kenjutsu and Fuinjutsu? I'm not going to learn the two ninja arts just because his clan was said to be good at them. I'm going to learn them because they are said to be very powerful. If they were so powerful that they destroyed a nation out of fear, they must be very useful techniques. Before reading about what the Uzumaki clan had done, Naruto was one of the people who didn't think weapons were useful. He was too interested in ninjutsu and its different forms because he thought they were cool. Because of this, he had never thought about adding weapons to his skills, but he did agree that they would be useful for times when taijutsu couldn't be used. Fuinjutsu, on the other hand, was a lot trickier to understand. Naruto wanted to learn it because he was living proof of how powerful it is. The Kyuubi inside him sealed it, but he wasn't even close to being ready to start. Naruto read the book that explained the basics of Fuinjutsu. It said that before you could learn Fuinjutsu, you had to be very good at math, calligraphy, chakra control, jutsu, Shiki, and Fuin. Shiki, and you had to have done at least one nature transformation. Naruto sighed as he compared the long list of skills needed to be able to do the job to his current list of skills. His handwriting was terrible, but no one had ever told him that, so he never had to practice it. It was almost impossible to learn about math, nature changes, chakra control, jutsu, Shiki, or Fuin. Shiki. The only things that were taught at the academy were basic math and chakra control. However, he was already planning to learn everything else, except for calligraphy, jutsu, Shiki, and Fuin. Shiki, even if he didn't learn Fuinjutsu. Naruto thought that he might try Fuinjutsu if he was talented and interested enough in it after he finally mastered those subjects or at least became very good at them. Naruto put the books on space time ninjutsu, Fuinjutsu, and the Uzumaki clan back on their shelves after writing down everything he needed to learn. He then picked up a book on chakra control. There were 4 basic chakra control exercises in the book: leaf sticking, tree walking, water walking, and senbon spinning. The author also explained in detail how to do each one and what the fits of having good chakra control are. If I can't do the clone technique because I can't control my chakra, is that because I use too little or too much chakra? Why did no one tell me before? Naruto was so mad that he almost pulled out his hair. He was listening to Iruka Sensei when the clone technique was talked about, but all he heard was things like, Naruto, try harder next time, or, you are using too little, too much chakra. Of course, he could be kind to Iruka Sensei because the man had only been moved from history to ninja studies a year ago and hadn't had a chance to look more closely at his problems. But it was getting old to only be told the problem and not the solution. Naruto kept reading different books and learned all of the chakra control exercises, taijutsu stances, and shurikenjutsu throwing postures before he left the library. The clone was left behind to keep reading the books on nature transformation. Naruto stretched his slightly stiff body after leaving the building. It had been a long time since he had sat down and studied seriously, but it made him feel nostalgic and proud. Naruto could feel his restless energy rising as he studied, though. He felt like he needed to move and do some kind of training before he blew up. As Naruto took a step toward Team 7's training ground, his stomach started to growl. Well, make that after I get something to eat, the blonde said in a timid voice as he patted his stomach. When Naruto first thought about getting ramen at Ichiraku, he remembered that his money pouch was almost empty, so he decided to make some instant ramen at home instead. Naruto made it to Training Ground 7 after eating. He planned to work on controlling his chakra first, since that was the most important skill for a ninja. Some people needed to be able to control their chakra well in order to use ninjutsu, genjutsu, or make fuinjutsu effectively. Even in taijutsu and bukijutsu, the person doing them had to keep shaping their muscles and sending chakra to them to make them stronger. Before you can use a technique, though, you have to shape your chakra by combining your mental and physical stamina. To shape the right amount of chakra, you need a chakra control that is high enough. You will pull too much or too little chakra if you don't. When hand signs are used to start a technique, chakra control is also used. Naruto knew that his clone technique didn't work because he wasted too much chakra when he used it. Because of this, the clone technique did not use enough chakra. The exercise where you stuck leaves together was required at the academy. He finally got it to stick to his forehead for the 5 seconds needed to pass the class, even though it took him a lot longer than other kids his age. This should be pretty simple. Before shaping and sending a stream of chakra, Naruto put the leaf on his forehead. He thought that the leaf would stick like it had before. However, almost right away after Naruto put the chakra on his forehead, the leaf was blasted off of him and broke up in the air, crushing any hopes he had. What? That leaf must be broken. This is something I've done before. Naruto was shocked to see the dust being blown away by the wind. Taking another leaf in his hands, he shaped and channeled chakra again, killing it soon after its friend. That's when Naruto knew it wasn't a dream. Because he hadn't practiced chakra control in 2 years, he had lost the fine control over his chakra that he used to have. Naruto thought it was a miracle that he was able to open the first gate without damaging his brain, since he knew he had no control over his chakra. Poof! Naruto made 5 copies of himself. The number wasn't too big, and they were just practicing sticking leaves together. He was sure that he could handle the mental stress of them going away. Everyone picked up some leaves that were lying on the ground and tried to use chakra to stick them to their foreheads. The leaves didn't know what would happen to them. Naruto was slowly molding and using less and less chakra as each leaf died. The leaf finally started to fly off his forehead, but it didn't break up in the air. Even though it wasn't much progress, Naruto was glad that it was progress. After an hour, Naruto spelled out the clones one by one to try to keep from getting too much information at once. He was shocked that he didn't feel too bad. Even though he got rid of thousands of them at one point after fighting Mizuki, they were only gone for seconds to minutes at a time. Also, the clones hadn't sent back much information. Naruto wasn't sure if this was because they were still high from the fight or because they couldn't remember things well. Still, these clones had been working on an exercise for a little more than an hour that he found pretty hard. It didn't bother him that they had essentially 5 hours of memories. Naruto took a leaf and put it on his forehead to see if the feedback from his clones helped him control his chakra better. As he had thought, the leaf stuck to his head for almost a second before being lightly blasted off. It looks like I was right when I said that shadow clones can help you control your chakra better. Since I can handle the stress, I might want to make more clones. Something not too bad, maybe 50 copies? Naruto said something to himself. When Naruto remembered what the clones had done, he realized that calling up 5 shadow clones didn't make him move 5 times faster. It was still much faster than working out by myself, though. So, 50 clones wouldn't give him 50 times more chakra control, but they would do it a lot faster than 5 clones. Naruto made another clone sign and wished for 50 copies to appear. He quickly counted the clones, though, and found that there were only 43 of them. Stupid chakra control underpowering my techniques, not making the number of clones I want. Naruto moaned and called up 7 more clones to make a perfect 50. In silence, the clones sat down, picked up a leaf nearby, and put it on their foreheads. Naruto was going to leave his clones to work on something that they couldn't help him with now that he was sure that the exercises they did to control his chakra made him more in control. Getting some exercise. I'll leave you guys alone and go train, hee. Naruto laughed at his own joke and then walked away. His clones gave him glares, sighs of frustration, and looks of confusion as they did so. Naruto thought about what little he knew about exercise while standing in a large open area. Some of the exercises he knew how to do were squats, lunges, planks, pull ups, sit ups, and running. But he hoped that the library would have a book on the subject that he could read the next time he went there. Naruto didn't really have a goal in mind when he did these exercises, but he planned to keep doing them until he got tired. Even though it was dangerous, he never had any issues with doing this at the academy. Naruto didn't care about what other people thought and pushed himself until he couldn't go any further. His dream was to be the strongest ninja ever, and Naruto knew he couldn't reach that goal if he didn't work harder than everyone else. He heard one of his older classmates at the academy say it as he was getting ready for class. If you believe in your dreams, you can accomplish them just by working hard. Naruto liked the idea, even though it was a strange one. It did not matter if he was talented or not or how quickly he learned. It only mattered if he was determined and able to keep going until he reached his goal. But if you didn't reach your goals, you only had yourself to blame. You didn't work hard enough. What happened to that upperclassman? Naruto didn't know, but he did know that the boy graduated and became a genin about a year ago. While thinking about these unrelated thoughts, Naruto pushed his body to the point where it could no longer move. He then laid down on the slightly wet grass and looked up at the clouds while he waited to be able to move again. His eyes went blank all of a sudden as he remembered reading many books and scrolls about the different kinds, details, and exercises of nature transformation. In simple terms, the 5 elements, wind, lightning, earth, water, and fire, represent the 5 basic changes that happen in nature. Wind and fire techniques are mostly offensive moves that cover a large area. Using water techniques to catch the enemy works. Earth techniques are mostly used for defense or extra help. There aren't many good offensive techniques. Lastly, lightning techniques used fast, deadly attacks that only hit one person. All of us have a chakra that is drawn to at least one of the 5 basic nature changes. This connection is often based on genes, and a special kind of paper called chakra induction paper can show if it exists. Paper for chakra induction? That will make Chan feel even worse about herself. He cried because Chan was going to go hungry for a while. Naruto didn't know what his affinity was, but he wasn't going to wait until he had enough Ryo to buy chakra induction paper to find out. Naruto had read that shinobi can train in natures that aren't their natural affinity, even if it's harder. So, he should focus on 1 or 2 natures, even if he didn't know what affinity he had. Following some consideration of the pros and cons of each elemental nature, Naruto chose to focus on earth and lightning. He chose earth because he thought it was the most useful element. It was mostly used for defense, but it could also be used for sneaking up on people or gathering information. Lightning, on the other hand, was clearly the best offensive element for him because it could kill quickly. Naruto got up and went back to the group of practicing clones after carefully going over the clones' memories and choosing which natures he wanted to focus on. He began to get rid of the clones in groups of 5 every couple of seconds. Naruto's mind was a little strained after getting rid of the 50 clones because memories kept coming back to him. He massaged his temples to ease the pain and thought, I feel like 50 is the limit. Naruto took out a leaf and put it on his forehead. After what seemed like a minute, he could no longer keep a steady flow of chakra to his forehead, and the leaf finally fell to his face. The boy was seen smiling, even though the leaf fell in the end. He was able to control his chakra better than ever in less than a day. Naruto was happy with his progress and made a new group of 50 clones. He told 25 of them to do the leaf-sticking exercise and told the other 25 to begin the first stage of Earth-Nature transformation exercises. In the first step, he shaped and changed his chakra into an earth-based chakra and sent it into the leaf. The leaf would fall apart into dirt if he changed his chakra correctly. I should make my chakra feel like it is solid and can't be moved, like a rock, Naruto told himself as he turned over a new leaf. But he had a hard time with the idea of turning his chakra into earth chakra, even after he knew what it should feel like. Naruto had a lot of questions because the book didn't go into great detail about how to change his chakra into any form. How can someone change how their chakra works? Is it based on what the person using the chakra thinks and wants? Or is manipulating chakra the same as controlling chakra? After Naruto got a vague idea of how to change his chakra, he thought that his clones could keep learning by making mistakes. Not paying attention, Naruto picked up a small pebble instead of a leaf and sent chakra into it without thinking about it. Naruto lost himself in the rock's field before he could realize what he had done wrong. His chakra spread into the ground below him. It seemed stable, including everything. Which made sense since the earth seemed to have no limits and was completely around him. Naruto said that the way he felt was like when he tried to change the nature of his chakra. It was very different. He did nothing but imagine it being hard and stuff while he was trying to change his chakra. Still, the chakra didn't make him feel as solid and stable as the earth around him did. It felt too stiff. Naruto opened his eyes and picked up the leaf again. He thought about how the ground felt around him. Before putting his chakra into the leaf, he felt it slowly change and become stronger. After infusing chakra into the leaf for a few seconds, Naruto looked at it very carefully. There was a small amount of brown at the very end that you could only see if you looked very closely, which made him smile big. Hey guys, look. Naruto smiled and held out the leaf to show his nature. changing clones how proud he was of them. The clones came together around Naruto, looking like curious kids, as they looked up from their leaves. As Naruto passed the leaf around the group, different people responded in different ways. What? There's nothing there. No, wait, look at the very tip. Ew. Boss, you're awesome. Naruto felt bad about himself as he grinned and scratched the back of his head. It was easy for him to forget that they were talking about him, but he still liked the compliments. I will dispel you all, and we can all start from this point. Naruto got rid of the clones. Even though the original clones couldn't turn any part of the leaf into dirt, they were all better at changing their chakra while sending it into the leaf. The new 25 Narutos showed up, got some more leaves, and kept training. Naruto realized at this point that he was finally back to normal after all the hard training. He always got better faster than other people his age. Whether he was hurt or just tired, the pain would go away in less than an hour of rest. He let go of the leaf he was holding now that he was fully healed. He left the clones to do their own exercises and began working out himself more. When he was able to do 1 or 2 more push-ups than he had an hour ago, he could see that he was getting stronger, which made him want to work even harder. He got up early the next day and sent a copy to the library. The clone was told to make 4 more shadow copies of itself, which were to change right away and start reading math, taijutsu, and different medical books. Naruto was trying to figure out why his experience with the 8 inner gates technique was different from the version that most people know and trust. He had to know a lot about the body, especially Tenketsu and the chakra pathway system, in order to do this. The blonde then went to where they were going to meet, which was under a tree at Training Ground 7. Naruto had some ideas about what Kakashi might be planning, but he didn't know for sure. He wanted to make several clones to start working on chakra control and nature transformations. When it came to Kakashi, Naruto still didn't know how to deal with the Genin or his team because he was still mad that they had left him tied to the post and not even thought to check on him hours later. After getting rid of any bad thoughts, Naruto decided not to be so quick to think badly of his team. It's possible that they were wrong to think that someone else would come back to check on him. He knew that no one was perfect because he had made many mistakes in his life. That way he wouldn't always be mad at them. He knew that he still wanted to have friends and family, even after everything that had happened the day before. He still believed that his first team would be his friends, family, and coworkers, even though the third Hokage had lied to him many times. He decided that he would try to get in touch with his team because of this. But both people in a friendship have to work at it. He would be nice to them even if they turned him down because they were on the same team, but he wouldn't go out of his way to help them if they were having trouble. Naruto had already arrived at the training grounds 10 minutes before the planned meeting time by the time he woke up. He leaned against a nearby tree and closed his eyes because Sakura and Sasuke were not there. But after another 5 minutes of waiting with no sign of his teammates or teacher, Naruto's restless energy almost begged him to do something to keep himself from getting bored. The boy then picked up a leaf nearby and tried to use Earth Chakra again. After hours of work on his Earth nature by his clones, a lot of progress was made. When chakra was applied, the tip of the leaf turned into dirt. There was still a long way to go, but Naruto was sure that after a month of training, he would be able to master the first stage of Earth nature transformation. He was going to start changing into lightning when he had enough Ryo to buy a steady supply of light bulbs. The voices of people he knew came from far away and broke Naruto's concentration. He could see Sasuke and Sakura walking toward him when he looked up from the leaf. The girl with pink hair talked about different things all the time. She was talking, but Sasuke didn't seem to hear a word. This didn't seem to bother the pinkette at all. "Good morning Sasuke, Sakura." With a small nod, Sasuke said, "HN," and then went back to thinking. The blonde boy asked, "Naruto? You're here earlier than I thought you would be." Sakura smiled, but not very happily. "Damn it, I wanted to spend more time with Sasuke-kun." Naruto could tell they didn't want to talk to him, so he kept quiet. If the other two noticed that he was more or less loud than usual, they didn't say anything about it. So, Naruto spent the next 3 hours focusing on changing into an Earth nature. He would sometimes pick up a new leaf when the old one was too damaged. As Sakura talked about things that Sasuke really didn't care about, he was lost in his own thoughts and didn't pay attention to her. A puff of smoke appeared in front of the 3 people exactly 3 hours before they agreed. Upon meeting time, it scared them. Kakashi waved his hand and said, "Yo." Sakura yelled at Kakashi, "You're late." but Kakashi just picked at his ear. At the same time, Sasuke just glared at them. In the 3 times they had met, Kakashi had been late, and he had chosen the time and place. The other 2 didn't know this, but Kakashi was surprised that all he heard was Sakura yelling at him. He had read through the history books of the 3 Genin, and he thought Naruto would also scold him for being late. When Kakashi looked at the boy in question, the look of anger made him even more confused. That Naruto gave him, and the boy turned his head away and was quiet. The team leader didn't ask any questions, though. Perhaps the boy was also tired and annoyed from having to wait for him. His Genin had no idea that he would be late to a lot of things with the group. How should I put this? A ninja donkey broke into my apartment last night and ate today's plans, so I had to stay up late to make new ones. Kakashi scratched his head in shame while praising himself to himself. They must believe this, right? Sakura asked, "Where are these new plans you're talking about?" She was interested in hearing the truth behind this story that sounded so silly. Right away, Kakashi didn't answer her question and turned around as he walked back toward Konoha's main street. "Well then, let's go get a mission, shall we?" The Genin just stared in shock at how obviously he was trying to avoid answering the question, but he still followed him. Naruto couldn't help but think, what's the point of meeting at Training Ground 7 if they're just going to walk back to Konoha when everyone gets there? At the same time, Kakashi was excited to see how his Genin would react when they found out what missions they would be given. He was sure that the different kinds of missions in Konoha wouldn't be explained until they got to Genin. When the group walked into the Hokage's office and opened the door, they saw the 3rd Hokage sitting at his desk with Iruka by his side as his assistant. Also, Naruto saw that there were 3 men on the left who were in charge of taking mission reports and processing them. Kakashi asked, "Hokage Sama, we have come for our first D rank mission." He looked a little less lazy as he showed respect for his leader. The Hokage took a quick look at the list of D rank missions and chose one at random. Well, let's start with something more simple. Painting a fence for Wadafumi-san? Iruka quickly went through a stack of papers and grabbed one from near the middle, as if he had done it many times before. He then wrote down who would be doing the mission and how much they would be paid before giving it to Kakashi. It's like Kakashi didn't even look at the form before putting it in his pocket. "Let's go, team." The 3 Genin followed him, and Kakashi smiled behind his mask as he felt Sakura and Sasuke staring at him. Even though Naruto was still looking at his feet, he was happy to bother 2 of the 3 Genin. Iruka said his first thing after the team left. "That was strange, I didn't expect Naruto to not complain." Having taught most of the boys' classes this past year, he was used to Naruto's loud outbursts and was ready for them. The Hokage gave Naruto a thought-filled nod. Naruto seemed off today. Whenever they met, even in a formal setting like this, the boy would treat him with the same disrespect he was used to. He was usually loud, but today he could not be heard. Iruka-kun, he probably knew what D rank missions are about a long time ago. Naruto-kun has been in the office many times when missions were given to Genin teams and even some newly promoted Chunin, Hiruzen said. His assistant nodded to show that he understood. He was pretty close to telling the truth when he spoke. In the years before he started the academy, Naruto had been in the office many times when missions were being given out. But for his sudden sharpening of memories, he would have forgotten everything about how D, C, and B rank missions are different. Naruto and his friends stood and knocked on a door near the middle of the village. Soon after, an old woman with graying hair and a confused look on her face opened the door. The old woman looked at Kakashi and asked, "Hello, we're here for the mission." Kakashi smiled at her. "Oh, I'm sorry, my memory is getting worse. You guys are here to paint the fence, right? Let me just bring you all inside," the old woman said as she looked around the group. She stopped looking at Naruto for a moment and then forgot about him. Something that half of the team didn't know about. With some worry, Kakashi looked down at his student and saw that the boy didn't seem to be bothered by anything. Either Naruto is used to being treated this way, or he didn't see it, the Jonin said with a frown. Which one did it go with? The old lady showed them the way to the backyard. 3 fences stood about 8 feet high, and the white paint on them was getting flaky from being so old. "Please paint all the walls with the white paint provided. I will bring out some juice later." As Sakura looked for a box to stand on, she asked, "What about the tops of the fences? We can't get to them." Or Sasuke. Kun might let us jump on his shoulders. She sighs to herself as she realizes that her haste kept her from getting closer to Sasuke. There are some stepladders in the house that were lent to me. Unfortunately, there are only 2 of them, so one of you will have to do without. The old woman gave Sasuke and Sakura the stepladders and then went inside to rest. Alright, guys. I'll paint this wall, Naruto said. He grabbed a paint bucket and a wooden brush and went to his fence. Sakura asked with hope, Sasuke. Kun, how about we share the same wall? Naruto finally got the message and moved to the other side of the garden. Now they might be able to get some alone time. The girl with pink hair said, I think it would be better if we each took a wall. When she was done, Sasuke cut her off and glared at the wall. Is this really what I want to do with my time? Sakura sighed and went to the last empty wall before freezing. She was a little sad about being shot down without giving it much thought. Kakashi. Sensei, what are you going to be doing? Oh, don't mind me, Sakura. I'm watching you to make sure you do the job right. Kakashi waved his hand lazily and then dug in his pockets for the orange book he was studying for the Genin exam. Sakura was getting more and more annoyed at how lazy her Genin Sensei was, so she let it all out on the floor. I hope I don't paint this dress. It would be so hard to get off, the pinkette complained. Yes, and if we do, let's hit our sensei. Hey, Shannon. Kakashi turned to look at his blonde pupil. The Genin could tell that the boy had painted before because he was the first one to start. It looked like Naruto was almost at the top of the first plank at this point. Kakashi thought Naruto would ask Sakura or Sasuke for a step ladder, so he was surprised when he just waved his hand and spoke to a shadow clone. The clone took Sasuke's mind off of his thoughts and Sakura's attention off of her conversation with Inner Sakura. They both looked at Naruto like they didn't understand why he was calling up one of his solid clones. The team then saw the clone jump on Naruto's shoulders, and Naruto pick up the paint can, letting the clone dip his brush in the paint. Once the clone was done painting the top of the first plank of wood, Naruto got down on his knees and began painting from the bottom of the second plank up. Naruto thought about making more clones to help with the painting, but in the end, he chose not to. Since there were only 3 paint buckets, several clones would have to share one, which would be a huge pain and not solve anything. They were glad they didn't have to share a stepladder as Sasuke and Sakura went back to their own fences. People would quickly get annoyed if they had to ask to borrow the ladder all the time. They would also have to wait, which would make the mission take even longer than it should. After about 2 hours, the sun had reached its highest point and was beating down on everyone in Konoha. Sakura was sweating from being in the sun all the time and was afraid she would get a tan because she had heard at the academy that Sasuke didn't like girls who were tan. Sasuke wiped the sweat off of his forehead and cursed to himself that he had to keep painting even though it was so hot. At the same time, Naruto wasn't as hot. Because they were bright orange, his jacket and pants reflected some of the heat away, making it much more bearable. Many thanks for your hard work. It was smart of me to hire some ninjas to do the job. The old woman left the house with 3 glasses of juice on a tray. She smiled at how things were going. The fences were almost finished with their first coat. I need to send in another mission for the last coat. Before going back inside, the old woman gave Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura a glass of juice. But Sakura and Sasuke were too far away from Naruto to see how badly the boy was being treated, but Kakashi could see everything. But what could he do about it? Make the woman afraid that he will tell the Hokage that she is favoritism? He didn't even have any proof. At the end, Kakashi knew he needed to talk to Naruto and the Hokage if the boy showed any signs of being uncomfortable with the care he was getting. Kakashi walked over to Naruto slowly. The sudden shade from his shadow made Naruto look up from painting the fence. He held out the glass of cold juice, which made the boy look at him in a strange way. The Genin with silver hair looked confused. He couldn't remember what he had done to make Naruto mad. It's possible that the boy knew a lot more than he thought about how the old woman treated him differently. Kakashi almost thought what he saw was a mistake because Naruto's face went back to normal as the boy took the juice from his hand and drank it. Thank you, Kakashi. Sensei, Naruto said, confused by the Genin's sudden kindness. No problem, Naruto. Kakashi took the empty glass and walked back to his game in the shade, where he opened a water bottle in his pouch and drank some. Naruto was done painting his side of the fence in less than 30 minutes. He turned around and saw that Sakura was still not done but Sasuke was almost done. Instead of asking Kakashi what he needed to do next, Naruto just did what he knew he should do. Help the other players. The blonde got his paint bucket and painted the other side of Sakura's fence. This made Kakashi nod his head, and he smiled behind his mask. He was glad to see that Naruto had really understood how important it was to work together. This was also seen by Sakura. She felt like getting mad at Naruto because she thought he was trying to win her favor. She swallowed her insult, though, because she knew she would have to hold everyone up in the unbearable heat. The three of them finished the mission quickly. After finishing his wall, Sasuke stepped up to help Sakura and Naruto. The old woman thanked Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi and signed the form when she was done. By this time, Sakura and Sasuke had noticed that the woman had thanked them but forgot to say Naruto's name. The Pinkette found this out after they left. So, Naruto, what did you do to make the old woman mad? Sakura asked, accidentally bringing up a subject Naruto had hoped to avoid. He could tell that Sasuke was interested in what he had to say by looking at his team, even though he didn't show it. While Kakashi tensed his shoulders, ready to explain if Naruto did something wrong. Sasuke said, "Ah ha ha, you know me, always pulling pranks on everyone." Naruto scratched the back of his head and put on a fake smile that made everyone but Kakashi believe him. Sasuke laughed and stopped paying attention to what they were talking about, while Kakashi's shoulders relaxed. So he knew. Sakura glared at Naruto and said, "I knew it. The nice old woman wouldn't hate you for no reason. Of course, it's your fault." This made the blonde wince. The way the villagers treated him because of the Kyuubi was still hurting him. He thought it would be some time before he could really get over the problem. As Naruto looked at Kakashi with gratitude, he cut Sakura off before she could continue her rant. "That's enough, Sakura. Let's hand in the mission." It was Team 7 again in the Hokage's office, ready to turn in their mission as it was done. Hokage. Sama, Team 7 has finished their mission. Kakashi gave the paid form and money to the workers on the left, who signed that the mission was finished. The mission workers then gave the Jonin the money, which they then split evenly among the team. As Naruto gave the money to Gama Chan, he thought, 5,000 ryo divided by 4 is 1250 each. That's not even enough for a week of ramen. Kakashi led the group out of the building and said, "We'll see you tomorrow." He then turned to look at his team, judging by their looks how tired they looked. Even though Sasuke was a little tired, he tried not to show it. Sakura was very tired, and the heat was making her feel really bad. Naruto, on the other hand, looked unconcerned. Truly a stamina monster, Kakashi thought. Kakashi said, "See you tomorrow at the same time and place." He then waved goodbye and turned into smoke. There wasn't much that impressed Naruto. He would have liked it if they could do more missions if they were only going to do D rank missions. What about getting trained? Is it his job to teach us, or are we supposed to figure everything out on our own? Naruto chose that if Kakashi was going to be 3 hours late again tomorrow and have to do one mission with the team before leaving, he would train his body and his clones. He might even ask if he can use shadow clones to do a few more D rank tasks and make more money to buy jutsu from the library. Sakura was excited and asked, "Sasuke-kun, would you like to go to a restaurant with me?" It made her happy to think about spending the ryo she had just earned. It was the first bunch of cash she got that wasn't pocket money or birthday money. Today was a waste of time, Sasuke thought to himself as he shook his head and walked away. Sakura chased after Sasuke and tried to get him to change his mind about both of them. She then left Naruto alone without saying goodbye. The boy looked hurt for a moment, then brushed it off and walked toward the middle of the village. After changing into a random man, Naruto went to a store for ninjas to buy some special light bulbs that they use for exercises where they change into lightning. After that, he went to the training grounds to make up the time he had missed. He stood behind his group and looked bored as they waited outside the Hokage's office. The routine for his team was pretty much the same every day. Kakashi is 3 hours late all the time, getting only 1 D rank mission done. Kakashi would give the money to different people and fire the team. Sasuke would leave almost right away, and Sakura would follow behind him. Naruto noticed that his team had certain habits after carefully watching them while they were together. Sasuke thought a lot of the time. He didn't usually start a conversation unless he needed something, and he only answered when someone asked him to. Sakura, on the other hand, thought about and talked to Sasuke a lot. Thankfully, she hadn't hit or yelled at him since the Genin exam. But she would sometimes say something mean when the villagers' behavior toward him was brought up. Kakashi, on the other hand, seemed like a nice but weird person. He thought that anyone who read porn in public would be seen as weird. It made him feel good that the man hadn't ignored him when the civilians ignored him in the silver-haired Genin would come check on him every so often. So it was strange that, if he cared that much, he left him tied to the post. On the other hand, Naruto had noticed that Kakashi was a lazy Genin teacher. He might have been waiting for a reason to train them, or he might not have planned when to train them. No matter what the reason was, he hadn't tried to teach the group yet. He was happy to just watch them. Naruto thought it was great that he was smart enough to train on his own instead of waiting to be taught. Because of this, he was good at the leaf-sticking exercise, and all of his clones could keep the leaf on their heads forever. The leaf can even stay on their hands, elbows, and knees while they move. Naruto was quick to notice that the better control of chakra had led to some clear improvements. He was able to make the exact number of clones he wanted while also making about 10% more. It was also easier to change the right amount of chakra into lightning or earth. Once the clones got good at sticking leaves together, they moved on to tree walking, which is a more difficult chakra control exercise. Naruto was also glad that there was a small lake close to the main training grounds. This way, he would have a nearby source of water when he was ready to start water walking. Naruto felt cold for a moment as he thought about the lake. He cursed his perfect memory because he could still remember how horrible it was when Kakashi used the Konohagakure secret finger technique, 1,000 years of death on him. As if he weren't supposed to, Naruto moved slowly away from Kakashi while thinking about it. As the team turned in their completed mission for the day, Naruto spoke up right after the Hokage told them they were free. Hokage-sama, I request permission to perform additional D-rank missions on my own. The Hokage was more shocked by Naruto's way of talking to him than by the shocking news that a Genin wanted more D-rank missions. Even though he had seen Naruto's mood change over the last few days, he had no idea that their relationship had gotten so much worse. Hiruzen thought to himself, this isn't good. Additionally, Kakashi had shared some worrying information about how civilians generally felt about Naruto while he was on missions. During the last 2 missions, the Jonin wrote more details about how the civilians in charge of the missions treat Naruto badly in their mission reports. Hiruzen wanted to find out more about Naruto, so he asked, and why do you want to do more D-ranks, Naruto-kun? If Kakashi was right about how the villagers felt about the blonde, then Naruto wouldn't want to take on more D-rank missions. Naruto didn't expect to be questioned about wanting more missions, so he was surprised by the sudden line of questioning. He didn't even have to think about what to say because it had been on his mind for days. I need money. Do you have money? When Hiruzen heard that, he got it. Naruto was now a genin of Konoha, which meant he could no longer get the stipend that orphans could get. The Hokage knew that Team 7 only did 1 D-rank mission a day. Depending on the pay and difficulty of the mission, they made between 1,250 and 5,000 ryo a day. That was barely enough to meet the basic needs of a ninja, let alone a growing boy like Naruto who could live on his own. Hiruzen thought that the others hadn't said anything about doing more D-rank missions because they all had extra money saved up. Toshiko Haruno didn't have to buy food or rent because she lived with her civilian parents. After becoming a Jonin, Sasuke Uchiha would be able to claim the wealth of his clan, which he had inherited from his family. While Kakashi had the money he had saved from his Jonin missions. Well, we have too many D-rank missions, Hokage-sama, Iruka said, pulling the Hokage out of his thoughts. Hiruzen agreed and nodded. Konoha has been getting more and more D-rank missions lately. There was a backlog of missions because of this, and the villagers who asked for them started sending complaints about how long it took to complete their requests. I suppose I could allow it. Nothing in the rulebook states that a genin in a team cannot apply for missions alone. Hiruzen gave in. Naruto bowed to show respect and said, thank you, Hokage-sama. Inside, he was happy and cheered. He could finally start saving money for the ninjutsu books he had been eyeing. While most of the people in the room watched, Naruto went to the missions section and picked out 5 missions where he had no chance of getting hurt. He said no to any missions that required heavy lifting or working with animals, like walking dogs. He asked, are you sure you want to take on so many missions, Naruto-kun? If you don't finish them, you'll get fined and get a mark on your record. This was a subtle way of reminding Naruto. Kun of what would happen if he failed. Naruto calmed Hokage Sama down by saying, "Don't worry, I'm aware." He then created 5 shadow clones and gave each one a mission. The clones read their mission statements and then left the building to do their work. The Hokage, Iruka, and Team 7 didn't know that as soon as the clones left the building, they changed into ordinary genin that could be found anywhere in Konoha. Naruto knew that if he went to people's homes or businesses on missions, they would ignore him. Even when he was with his team, they didn't tell him much. They might turn him down if he went by himself, which would mean he had to give up the mission. The civilians were pretty easy to trick with a simple change, though, since most of them didn't know anything about ninjas. The main Naruto stood in the room with the shocked people and tilted his head, not sure why everyone was looking at him. What? Shadow copies? I see. If Naruto-kun keeps sending clones on missions, we might be able to get rid of this backlog, and I won't have to deal with the annoying complaints from civilians. Hiruzen was excited about this because it meant he would have less work to do every day. After that, Kakashi led the group away, leaving the Hokage and his helpers behind. Hiruzen looked deeply reflective as he thought about all the things he had noticed about Naruto's altered state of mind. A villager named Kakashi said that Naruto was aware that the villagers were being unfair to him but wasn't showing any anger toward them. But after reading the very detailed reports, Hiruzen wouldn't be shocked if he did. But all of a sudden, Naruto became angry at him for no reason. He might have been angry because he hadn't told the boy that he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Hiruzen thought that the blonde might have finally worked through everything that had happened a week ago and was now starting to understand what it all meant. Hiruzen lit up his pipe and took a deep breath. If he didn't know why she changed her mind so quickly, there wasn't much he could do to fix it. He had heard about Naruto's behavior and attitude over the years. His stubbornness was one thing that hadn't changed. He couldn't get the boy to forgive him until he admitted what he did was wrong and said sorry. Someone dropped a big stack of papers in front of the Hokage, which took his attention away from what he was thinking. In his mind, Hiruzen cursed Minato for making him Hokage and giving him all the work that came with that. As he began his new work, he thought to himself, maybe it's time to start looking for a new successor. Over the next 2 weeks, Naruto's clones went to the mission's office every day to turn in their finished tasks before leaving with a new one. He reached into his pocket and took Gamma-chan out. Gamma-chan was full and couldn't eat anymore. The rest of the Ryo had to be kept at home because there were so many missions going on all the time. Naruto was surprised by how many and what kinds of D-rank missions there were. Many of them were boring, like babysitting, walking dogs, or even catching a cat named Tora. But there were also a lot that were about learning something. Genin didn't like the skill missions, as Naruto called them, as much as the regular missions because they had to learn a civilian life skill, which they didn't think they were supposed to do. To top it all off, Genin didn't get paid more for skill missions because they were harder and required him to learn a skill. Because of this, Genin would choose to finish the easier mission over the harder one if the pay was the same. Because of this, there were always a lot of skill missions to choose from. When Naruto first heard about the skill missions, he knew deep down that he didn't need to learn a normal skill since he was going to be killing people soon. In spite of that, he wasn't going to be a ninja his whole life, and ninja arts can't fix everything. So, he took on a food preparation job from one of Konoha's restaurants with the goal of just trying it out. To get potatoes, carrots, and other vegetables ready for the chef and their helpers to use, peeling them was a pretty easy job. Naruto found it easy once he knew what to do because he had trained to be a ninja and had good body control. He had spent a lot of time watching and listening to the chefs teach their apprentices because he was bored. Naruto started learning how to cook without even realizing it because he had a great memory. As a first step, they learned how to do simple things like chop, slice, and dice with a knife. When Naruto learned how to do things like julienning, brunoise, and chiffonade with a knife, though, they quickly got better. Naruto became interested in cooking after learning these skills without realizing it. He only ate instant ramen at home because it was cheap and good. He still thought about one thing. He might be able to make his own ramen if he learned how to cook. It might not be as good as Ichiraku's, but it would taste much better than instant ramen and never will. Naruto took a break from reading books about math, medicine, and the different ninja arts and spent the day in the civilian section of the library. He spent his time instead reading about cooking. He learned that marinades, herbs, spices, and even how the food is presented at the end can make it look better after reading several books. He found out about food's nutritional value while reading, which interested him enough that he bought several more scrolls on the subject. Naruto had never really thought about food before reading these scrolls. He just knew that he had to eat to stay alive and that fruits and vegetables were good for him. Still, when he was done with the nutrition books, he learned about the 7 main groups of nutrients. Nutrients are things that the body needs but can only get from eating different kinds of foods. He had been having trouble with something for almost a week, but learning about proteins, one of the main types of nutrients, helped him solve it. Even though the books in the library helped him make a better training plan, he had been slowing down his physical training. At first, he thought it was because of the sudden change in routine or because he had been training too much. But his progress had pretty much stopped, even after going back to his old exercise routine or taking a day off. After reading about the nutrients in food, like proteins, Naruto realized that his mostly ramen-based diet wasn't giving him enough protein. He didn't even come close to getting enough protein to build muscle, even on days when he splurged and ate several bowls of instant chicken ramen. This was especially true for a growing boy like him. Naruto had finally learned one of the things his mother had told him. His mother told him, "Don't be a fussy eater." But if he wouldn't eat anything but ramen, didn't that make him a picky eater? Naruto then spent the rest of the day learning how to cook different foods, including red and white meats, fish, vegetables, fruit, and processed foods like flour. He also learned different cooking techniques and recipes. He also went on more kitchen missions and watched the chefs carefully, stealing their techniques to use in his own cooking to make it taste better. It had been almost 2 weeks since Naruto started cooking. He wasn't a master chef yet, but he could make tasty food that wasn't ramen. Because he changed the kinds of food he bought, his food costs did go up a lot. The blonde didn't mind the small problem because he was once again making quick progress in his workouts and wasn't always hungry between meals. Naruto knew that ramen wasn't good for him, but he still couldn't give it up completely. Every time he ate it, he thought of how nice Tucci and Ayame were to give him ramen even though they didn't have any money. He made sure that whenever he was hungry, he would only eat homemade or Ichiraku ramen. Naruto told his clones to focus on the other D-rank tasks that taught them life skills after they learned how to cook from the food preparation missions. Because Naruto was good at skills, he took on any job that asked for them. Some of the medical information he had learned in the library had been put to use when his clones took on a few D-rank missions from Konoha's pharmacies. He learned how to tell the difference between different kinds of medicinal plants and how to pick them himself. In the meantime, he had also learned how to make herbal salve for wounds, chakra fatigue, and the flu. Naruto always thought he didn't have much of a green thumb, so he was excited to see that there were gardening missions. He had been growing plants in pots even while he was in the academy, but he now knew they were weeds. Naruto learned how to care for and tell the difference between different kinds of plants. He also bought some herbs and spices, like mint, basil, chives, and thyme. He planned to eventually make his small garden bigger and plant some of the medicinal herbs he had learned about in school. As soon as Naruto learned about D-rank skill missions, he didn't get why ninjas were so angry at them. It wasn't fun for him to catch the demon cat Tora with his team or do D-rank missions where he had to deal with the villagers, but jobs like working at the drugstore were fun. Naruto was sure that one day he would be glad he took the time to learn how to cook, grow, and use a lot of different medicinal herbs and spices. Naruto left the library with a D-rank technique and 2 C-rank techniques in his hands. He stood there and thought about what he had learned from the 2 weeks of D-rank missions. The Shunshin was the D-rank move. Ninjas could use a puff of smoke to hide their movements as they moved quickly between 2 points that were hard to track. Naruto realized that Kakashi would use this technique whenever he would appear out of nowhere in front of them after reading about it. The techniques in the C-rank were earth release techniques. He had slowed down his progress by dividing his nature transformation clones into 2 groups that studied earth and lightning, but he was still far enough along to learn C-rank techniques. Earth release. Earth shore return was the name of the first earth technique, which was a defense move. The user slammed their hands on the floor to flip a huge earth wall in front of them that was strong enough to handle C-rank moves. Earth release. Hiding like a mole was the name of the second earth technique, which was a backup or reconnaissance technique. The ground around the person who used it turned into fine sand that they could dig up to 40 meters deep. Using magnetic forces, they could figure out where they were and what was going on above them. Naruto liked the way he chose to fight. In the beginning, he wanted to get an offensive Earth-style technique, but there weren't many good ones. However, Konoha didn't have many lightning techniques. He was interested in a B rank technique, but would have to save up enough Ryo to learn it. In any case, the speed, defense, and escape, hiding techniques he bought were just as useful, if not more so, than any offensive techniques he could have bought. You couldn't fight the bad guys if you were already dead. Naruto looked at the scrolls and then went to Training Ground 7 to learn them as quickly as possible. Naruto was so excited by the time he got to the training grounds that he couldn't wait any longer. Something about ninjutsu made him want to do it all the time. He thought it was because it was the most varied ninja art that he knew of. He found it fascinating that changing the hand seals or the way chakra was shaped could make such big differences in the type, size, shape, and power of the technique that was made. It was the Shunshin technique that Naruto first learned because it was the easiest to understand and the most useful for him at the time. Since all of his missions took place in or near Konohagakure, there was no chance that they would fight. Kakashi also hadn't started training or sparring yet. But every once in a while, he called the team to the practice field to teach them different formations and teamwork activities. As a result, the Shunshin technique was likely the most useful of the three at the time. He and his clones would be able to get to their destinations faster, which meant he could finish more D rank missions in a day. Naruto wrote a summary of what he had read about the Shunshin's uses, hand seals, and limitations. There was an easy way to do the Shunshin. You just had to picture yourself in a tiger seal while holding your hands together. As a result, chakra will flood every cell for a split second, letting the user move much faster than usual. In one of the other notes, it was said that the Shunshin wasn't great for traveling long distances. When a person uses this power, they put a lot of chakra into their muscles, especially their legs. This makes the muscles wear out faster. When the Shunshin technique is used too much, it can hurt muscles and, in the worst cases, nerves. This can be lessened, though, by making your leg muscles stronger so they can handle the same amount of chakra without getting tired. Naruto stood up, closed his eyes, and put his hands in a tiger seal. He had read the scroll all the way through. He imagined himself standing on a branch of a tree about 100 meters away. Chakra quickly filled his body and saturated his muscles. He then disappeared in a puff of smoke and crashed into a nearby tree. "Ah!" Naruto screamed in pain as he yanked himself off the tree, showing a cut face. It hurt like hell, even though his body was full of chakra that eased some of the pain. But it wasn't long before his body's natural healing system took over and stopped the bleeding in his nose. While that was going on, Naruto carefully rubbed the hurt parts of his face while wiping his nose clean with his sleeve. Maybe it would be best to avoid a place with a lot of blocks at the beginning. That's what Naruto told himself. Smashing into a tree at very high speeds wasn't something he wanted to do very often. He thought he'd start in a field and work his way up to the technique. As soon as Naruto wasn't hurt anymore, he went to a clear space and tried again. This time, he imagined himself showing up in the middle of the field, disappearing, and then coming back almost right away. Naruto looked down and compared where he thought he was to where he actually was. It looks like I'm 20 meters away from where I wish I were. Thank God I didn't try on trees again. He thought that if he kept practicing in the woods, he would hit a lot more trees and branches. As he got closer to where he wanted to go, the boy with blonde hair kept trying the technique and slowly got better at it. He would think about why he failed after every failure before trying again. He had picked up this way of thinking while studying math and was now using it in all of his training practices. Naruto learned much faster when he had a clear direction to follow instead of just learning things without thinking about them. He could fix his mistakes a lot faster if he knew what they were. Instead of doing the same thing over and over again to make progress, he could focus on the exact spot where he went wrong if he could guess or analyze where he went wrong. Following 10 rounds of the Shunshin, Naruto sat down on the grass, curled up, and held his stomach. The technique notes also said that if someone used Shunshin too many times in a row, the excessively fast movement would make them sick, and they might even throw up. Naruto decided to make shadow clones to keep training since he had learned the Shunshin technique and was able to use it as well as anyone else. He hoped that having trained for a few days, he would be able to use the Shunshin to go exactly where he wanted to go. Because he was from the Uzumaki family, Naruto knew he had more chakra than most shinobi in Konohagakure. So, the main problem with the technique was that it made him sick, gave him tunnel vision, and put a lot of stress on his leg muscles. As soon as Naruto's stomach felt better, he took out a scroll that had the following technique and read it. Earth Release. Earth Shore Return is a defensive jutsu with a rank of C. For this technique to work, the person doing it had to focus Earth Chakra into both hands and then slam them into the ground. When the jutsu is done right, a piece of the ground is torn up and used as a wall as soon as the person hits the ground. After reading the essence of the technique, Naruto stood up and charged his hands with Earth Chakra. He then hit the floor hard with them. What looked like a wall did not appear from the ground. In fact, the only thing that came out was a sharp, stinging pain coming from his fingers. The pain from his hand had quickly grown so bad that Naruto started to cry out in pain before he could stop himself. That blonde guy shook his hands in the air as hard as he could to try to get rid of the pain they were telling him. Naruto knew it wouldn't be as easy as he thought it would be to learn ninjutsu, but he didn't think he would hurt himself on the first try at every technique. What he really wanted was for it to be hard to learn, like the Kawarimi and Henge techniques. But the die had already been rolled, and Naruto was set on mastering Earth Release, Earth Shore Return. Like when he learned the Shunshin, the blonde thought about why he had failed every time he did something wrong. He didn't get enough Earth Chakra. There was a difference in how hard each hand hit the floor. Not hard enough when he hits the ground with his palms. Naruto finally got it so that when he slammed his hands on the floor, a pretty big, rectangular crack would show up. Thankfully, the cracks got better after Earth Chakra was used on them. During his time learning this new skill, Naruto didn't want to cause any damage. After trying Earth Release, Earth Shore Return over and over for an hour, a fairly thick sheet of earth rose from the ground and stood tall in front of Naruto. The boy with blonde hair cheered with happiness when the technique finally worked, rubbing his hurt hands together. It made Naruto happy that he had taken the time to learn the basics of Earth-Nature transformation before he tried to learn the technique. He knew that it would be over 10 times harder to learn an elemental skill if he hadn't already changed nature. Naruto walked up to the wall and pressed his foot against it, slowly putting more and more force on it. Even though the blonde pushed against the wall with all his strength, it didn't seem to move at all. As soon as Naruto thought he understood the basics of the move, he used Earth Chakra to push the wall from the other side. After making a loud thud and a small cloud of dust, it just fell back into the hole it had made. Before moving on to the last move, Naruto fixed the floor's cracks. Earth Release. How to hide like a mole. Of all the techniques he had bought, this was without a doubt the most dangerous. This was done so that the user wouldn't suffocate underground if the jutsu didn't work or was turned off too soon. Naruto quickly made 3 hand seals, the bird, the tiger, and the ram. Then he sent chakra into the ground. It looked like nothing was going on at first, but soon the land around them turned into fine sand. Soon after, the sand seemed to harden, and the ground went back to how it was before. Following a few hours, Naruto was seen swimming in the dirt in Training Ground 7. When he moved forward, the sand behind him quickly turned back into solid ground. The only part of the ground that changed into sand was the part that was directly touching Naruto. Naruto had never felt anything like clinking his fist through the ground before, so it was a new experience for him. The blonde was in luck because the earth chakra covering his body made it easy for him to move through the sand. A few times, the technique ended quickly because the chakra supply wasn't stable and the chakra wasn't spread out evenly. Naruto was lucky that he always had at least one hand above ground, so he could quickly make the signs again. Naruto got scared the first time it happened because the sand slowly hardened around him. He quickly made the 3 hand seals that were needed before calming down. But after a few times where the technique didn't work, the blonde was able to calmly decide when the technique stopped working. He hadn't practiced going underground yet, though, because he was afraid he would lose control of the technique. Naruto thought that he would let his clones get better at this part of the jutsu before he tried to use it himself. Naruto called up 30 clones and told 10 of them to focus on each technique after learning the basics of all 3 jutsu himself. At first, Naruto had to replace a few clones that had died when the Shunshin and Earth Release, hiding like a mole, were not done correctly. Some had passed out while they were underground, and others had hurt themselves by running into something. He didn't think the clones would get to the point where they could cut down on the number of hand seals they needed. He did, however, want every technique he had to work every time. There was no point in learning ninjutsu if you couldn't use it 100% of the time, according to most of the library books he had read. What if he had put all of his hopes into Earth Release, Earth Shore Return to defend against an attack, but the wall didn't come up when he wants it to? So, Naruto would keep sending clones to practice the technique even if 1 out of every 100 or even 1000 times they failed. In real life combat situations, even a 0.1% chance of not activating could mean that he gets hurt or dies. He wouldn't tell them how to make the technique stronger, use less chakra, or lower the number of hand seals until the clones were able to make the jutsu work 100% of the time. Naruto thought he was being too cautious, but he knew he had a long time to prepare since he wasn't going to be fighting any other ninjas for a while. Because of this, he wanted to be as flexible as possible and also improve the skills he hadn't been able to learn at the academy. He was already much better at controlling his chakra than before, and he was quickly getting better at walking through trees. At the same time, his knowledge had grown by huge amounts. Since they had perfect memories and shadow clones, it only took them a week to remember everything they had learned at the academy over the past 5 years. Now, Naruto was focusing on learning everything a genin should know, along with other things like learning the basics of jutsu. Shiki. He hoped that in a month, he would be able to start learning the basics of jutsu. Shiki. He had also learned some useful things about medicine from his studies. He had read many books about chakra pathways, tenketsu, the body's organs, and most of all, the brain. Naruto thought he would soon know for sure if the second inner gate was safe to open and how to do it. He still remembered the good things that would happen if the first gate was permanently opened. When Naruto looked down at the wooden sword he bought with his ninjutsu, he didn't start swinging it around aimlessly right away. He knew from what he had read about kenjutsu and taijutsu that bad habits are easy to make and hard to break. He had to get help from a professional to learn any kind of taijutsu or kenjutsu. But he wanted to get to know the sword, even though he didn't know how to use it. Naruto thought that it might work the same way as nature changing. That getting to know the sword would help him learn techniques more quickly and easily. He knew that the sword had to be steady, accurate, and quick from what he had read in the library. It has to be able to be swung around like an extension of the body at all times. Right after stability came accuracy. How could the person holding the sword be sure that it would hit their target if their hand wasn't stable? Last but not least, speed. It didn't matter how fast the sword strike was if it wasn't accurate. Naruto thought of many ways to test and improve his stability. He finally decided that he would be stable if he could balance something on the end of his sword without it falling off. For this reason, he chose a pretty big rock and put it on the end of the wooden sword to keep it steady. He had a hard time getting the rock to sit on the sword at first, but he eventually got it stable enough to rest on. For every time the heavy rock made the tip of the blade lean forward, Naruto would lift it back up until it was level. It would be done again and again if Naruto leaned the sword too far forward and the rock fell off. He would pick up the rock and start over. That being said, Naruto kept holding the sword steadily even though his arm was completely numb by this point. He knew that he could die in battle the next time he gave up here and took the easy way out by resting. It was worth the pain he was in now if it meant he wouldn't die in the future.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.